This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're pulling on a thread that, honestly, I didn't expect to go this deep. We're looking at a figure who is just a massive historical paradox. I mean, usually when we talk about philosophers from, 100 years ago, we're talking about people who were influential in dusty academic circles.
Right. Usually it's someone known by maybe 10 other professors and nobody else.
But this guy, Henri Bergson, he was different. At the turn of the 20th century, he wasn't just a professor.
No.
He was arguably the most famous intellectual on the planet. I was reading that people were literally climbing through the windows of the Collège de France just to hear him speak.
It was like Beatlemania, but for a metaphysics professor, it's hard for us to even imagine that kind of celebrity for a philosopher today.
It is. But here's the catch, and this is why I wanted to do this episode. Despite dominating his era, despite the crowds and the fame, he kind of vanished.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't leave behind a school of Bergsonism, no disciples, no rigid system. And today, if you mention him, people usually just look blank.
Right.
So the mission today is to figure out, how do you go from being the biggest rock star in the world of ideas to, well, a ghost? And more importantly, what did he know that maybe we've forgotten?
And the answer to that is, I think, surprisingly relevant to how we live right now. If you look at the sources we have, specifically the analysis framing him as a philosopher of wit, you realize Bergson wasn't trying to build a fortress of logic. He wasn't trying to create some heavy, impenetrable system. He was doing something closer to, well, intellectual stand-up comedy.
See, that's the part of the reading that stopped me cold, intellectual stand-up. Because when I think of philosophy, I think of, dense German texts and headaches.
Of course.
I do not think of a tight 5 minutes at the Comedy Store. Is that just a metaphor, or was he actually, cracking jokes?
It's a metaphor, but a very, very precise one. Think about what a really great stand-up comedian actually does. I'm not just talking about telling knock-knock jokes.
Right.
I mean, someone like a George Carlin or, Chappelle, they don't lecture you on facts. They take something you do every single day, something rigid, mechanical, and totally accepted, and they rotate it just 1 degree.
And suddenly you see how ridiculous it is.
Precisely. They expose the absurdity of the routine.
Yeah.
And that realization, it makes you laugh.
No.
Bergson used that same mechanism, that specific type of French esprit or wit to fight against the incredibly heavy, suffocating atmosphere of his time.
Okay.
He wasn't trying to destroy the world. He was trying to get people to see the humor in how seriously they were taking all the wrong things.
And we really need to set the scene for the wrong things, because the atmosphere of the late 19th century wasn't exactly a comedy club. We are talking about the peak of the Industrial Revolution here.
The era of the machine. Factories, steam engines, telegraphs. There was this overwhelming, culturally dominant idea that science had finally figured it all out. There was a sense that the universe was just a giant clock, and we were all just little gears clicking along inside it.
That's the suffocation the sources talk about, that feeling that everything is just predetermined by physics and mechanics.
And Bergson's entire career was a pushback against that suffocation. But, and this is so key, he wasn't some anti-science Luddite screaming at the steam engines.
That's a common misconception, right? I was surprised to see his background wasn't just poetry and literature.
Far from it.
Yeah.
He was a dual talent. He taught both mathematics and philosophy. He understood the math better than most of his critics.
Wow.
And that's actually why he was so critical of it. He developed this profound unease, not because he didn't get science, but because he understood its limits. Maybe too well.
So he's a mathematician who starts realizing that math is trying to conquer territory where it doesn't belong.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
He saw that the mathematical worldview, which is fantastic for building a bridge or, designing a train schedule, it becomes a nightmare when you apply it to a human life. When you start treating a human soul like it's a steam engine, you lose something vital.
The source material focuses so heavily on this one concept, post facto necessity. Now, this is a bit of a dense term, but it seems to be the core of his argument against that whole mechanical worldview.
It is the core, and it's a trap we still fall into every single day.
Okay, so let's break post facto necessity down. Is it basically just saying hindsight is 20/20?
It's deeper than that. It's not just that we see things clearly in hindsight. It's that we rewrite the nature of reality. Think about reading a biography of, say, Napoleon.
Yep.
You read it from page 1 to the end, and because the book is already written, you get this feeling that Napoleon's rise was inevitable. You think, of course he became emperor. He was Napoleon.
Right. We look at the variables. He was ambitious. He was a genius. The French Revolution happened. And we say, well, given A, B, and C, the result D had to happen.
But Bergson says that is an illusion we create after the fact.
Yeah.
In the actual moment of living, Napoleon didn't know he was Napoleon, the historical figure. He could have been shot. He could have quit. He could have tripped and broken his neck. By looking at it backwards, we steal the freedom from the past. We turn a wild, flowing life into a rigid, mechanical script.
That's fascinating. It's like we freeze the flow of time and turn it into a solid block of ice so we can inspect it.
Yes.
But in doing so, we kill the very thing we're trying to study.
And he connected this directly to the heavy hitters of his time, specifically Hegel. Hegel's philosophy was all about this massive retrospective system where history is just the spirit marching toward a necessary conclusion. It's a very deterministic way to see the world.
So deterministic.
Bergson looked at that and felt, well, claustrophobic.
Which leads us right to his first major work, Time and Free Will. And I have to say, his definition of freedom is not what I was expecting. It's not really about choices, is it?
No, and this is where modern listeners might get tripped up. When we say freedom today, we think of the cereal aisle.
Yeah.
I am free because I can choose between chocolate frosted flakes and Honey Nut Cheerios.
Consumer choice. A menu of options.
Bergson would say that's just selecting between predetermined paths. That's not freedom, that's just a flowchart. For Bergson, freedom was a visceral sensation. It's the feeling you have right now in this exact split second that the future is not written.
I see.
It's the sensation that you are creating your next action, not just executing a command.
It sounds almost less like a political right and more like a biological reality.
It is grounded in biology for him. It's a resistance to the idea that you are a robot. He wanted to remind people that the me right now is not a machine following a script set by the universe.
Speaking of machines following scripts, we have to talk about the factories. You can't really separate Bergson's philosophy from the reality of the people living through it.
Not at all.
The source material draws this incredible parallel between Bergson and Charlie Chaplin.
It's a brilliant connection, specifically Chaplin's film Modern Times.
Yeah.
If you want to understand Bergson, you almost have to watch that movie.
It's that classic scene where the little tramp is on the assembly line, just tightening bolts. He's doing it so fast, over and over, that his body starts jerking uncontrollably. He can't stop.
Exactly. Even when he walks away from the line, he's still twitching. He's still trying to tighten bolts on people's noses. Now, Bergson didn't write political manifestos about factory safety.
Right.
But his philosophy maps perfectly onto that image. In the factory, lived time, the fluid time you feel, is murdered by clock time. Your movements are chopped up. Minute 1, do this. Minute 2, do that. You become a cog.
And in the movie, Chaplin literally gets sucked into the gears of the machine at one point. It's terrifying, but we laugh.
And that laughter is the critical point. That is where Bergson and Chaplin align. Neither of them responded to this industrial nightmare with rage.
No.
They didn't stand on a soapbox and scream, "Smash the machines, burn the factories."
Which is what a lot of other thinkers were doing. Marxists, anarchists, they were angry.
They were furious. But anger, in a way, it validates the system. It treats the machine as a worthy opponent.
Yeah.
Bergson and Chaplin used laughter.
Laughter.
By exaggerating the mechanical movement, by showing a human being acting like a jerky robot, they showed how absurd it was.
It's that esprit again. You don't punch the machine, you mock it.
You create distance.
Yeah.
When you laugh at Chaplin getting eaten by the machine, you are stepping outside the system. You are intuitively recognizing that is wrong. A human is not a gear. It's a way of reclaiming your humanity through wit rather than through violence.
So Bergson is in Paris using this French lightness to push back against the machine. But the sources highlight a really stark contrast with what was happening just across the border in Germany. Because they were looking at the same industrial world, but they definitely weren't laughing.
No, they were not. This is a crucial piece of context. While Bergson is having his moment in the Belle Epoque, that beautiful era before the war, German philosophy is entering a full-blown crisis.
What drove that crisis? Was it just the industrialization, or was it something deeper?
It was a perfect storm. First, you had the death of Hegel. After he died, the German university system sort of cracked. It split into philosophy versus theology. Then science comes along and basically says, we'll handle explaining the natural world, thanks.
So philosophy kind of lost its job description.
It lost its crown, and then, of course, World War I happens,
Right.
which was catastrophic for the German psyche.
Mm.
The source describes the mood as the gravity of the loser. You have a nation that is humiliated, broken, and mechanized.
Yeah.
So while Bergson is finding a way to smile at the absurdity, German philosophy, represented by figures like Martin Heidegger, decides to retreat.
Retreat sounds passive, though. Were they hiding from the modern world or trying to find a bunker to survive it?
Bunker is a good word for it. They retreated inward. Since the external world was taken over by science and war, they dove into what they called ontology.
Okay, ontology is one of those words that scares people off. In this context, what are they actually asking?
Put simply, instead of asking, how do we build a better society, or how does the world work, they started asking, what does it mean to exist at all?
Oh, wow.
It's the heaviest question you can possibly ask. Heidegger's work is filled with anxiety, with the concept of being toward death, with the finiteness of human life.
So if Bergson is a comedian pointing out the absurdity of the machine, Heidegger is the guy staring into the abyss saying, the machine is going to kill us and we are all alone.
In a nutshell, yes, it's a philosophy of heaviness. Bergson, on the other hand, represented a world where distance through laughter was still possible. He offered a way to shift the burden of thought.
I like that.
He wasn't trying to dig a hole to the center of the earth like the Germans. He was trying to step to the side and let the heavy boulder roll past him.
I love that image of stepping to the side. It feels so much more habitable. But Bergson wasn't the only one trying to fight the heaviness or the deadness of the system. We have to talk about Friedrich Nietzsche.
The other great vitalist. Both Nietzsche and Bergson were fighting for life with a capital L.
Yeah. Right.
They both hated the frozen, dead metaphysics of the past.
Yeah.
They both wanted vitality.
But their vibes could not be more different. Nietzsche feels like he's bringing a sledgehammer to the party.
Nietzsche was the stick of dynamite. His method was destruction. He looked at the old values, religion, morality, logic, and said, these are corrupt. I will smash them to pieces so we can build something new.
So combative.
It was a war.
And Bergson.
Bergson was the anti-Hegelian who refused to fight.
Yeah.
He realized that if you argue with a rigid logician, you're playing their game. You lose just by participating. So his method wasn't destruction, it was invalidation.
Invalidation. That's a subtle distinction. How does that work in practice?
He wouldn't say you are wrong. He would say your explanation is perfectly correct for a rock, but we're talking about a person. He would say your map is perfect, but it's not the terrain. He simply pointed out that their rules didn't apply to the game he was playing.
I'm not arguing about the map. I'm talking about the walk.
Exactly. And that is incredibly liberating. It highlights why he was so popular. He wasn't dragging people into a depressing, destructive debate. He was opening a window and letting fresh air in.
Let's go back to that popularity for a second. We mentioned the Collège de France earlier. It's fascinating that an academic institution became the stage for this kind of cultural phenomenon.
The Collège de France is unique. It wasn't a degree factory. It was a stage for public knowledge. Lectures are open to anyone. And Bergson wasn't just a professor. The source calls him a guest attraction.
Which sounds almost derogatory, like he's a circus act.
It sounds that way, but it highlights his power. The institution didn't make him famous. He was already a celebrity writer.
Okay.
The institution borrowed his fame to stay relevant. People came to see him think. They came to watch him perform this intellectual stand-up.
But this brings us back to the central paradox we started with. If he was the Beatles, if he was the guest attraction everyone wanted to see, why did he leave no legacy? Where are the Bergsonians?
It's the question that haunts his biography. But the source argues that this wasn't a failure. It was a feature.
How can having no followers be a feature?
Because Bergson's philosophy wasn't a system you could memorize. It wasn't a checklist. It wasn't a dogma. It was a change in viewpoint. It was that shift we talked about.
Up to collision thing.
Right. Once you look at a picture and see the duck instead of the rabbit, you can't unsee it. You don't need a duck as society to remind you it's a duck. You just see it.
Right.
Bergson wanted you to see that life is a flow, not a machine. Once you see that, once you really feel that shift, his job is done.
So he didn't want disciples. He wanted people to wake up.
The comparison to Descartes is useful here. Neither of them were organization men. They didn't build institutions. They were individuals who said, hey, try looking at it from this angle, and once you do, you don't need the teacher anymore.
That is surprisingly refreshing. We live in a world now where everyone is trying to build a brand, a funnel, a community, a subscription model. Bergson just wanted you to have the aha moment and then go about your day.
He didn't want you to study him. He wanted you to use his perspective to breathe a little easier.
So let's bring this home. Why should someone listening to this deep dive, someone stuck in traffic, or washing dishes, or prepping for a Zoom meeting care about Henri Bergson today? Because we aren't in the 1900s anymore.
We aren't, but I would argue the machine is stronger than ever. We don't just have factory clocks. We have algorithms. We have productivity trackers. We have a culture that demands we optimize every single second of our lives.
We are absolutely living in that state of post-facto necessity. If I don't get this data point, I won't get the result and my life will fail.
We treat ourselves like software that needs debugging, and that feels suffocating. It leads to burnout. It leads to that feeling that you were just a passenger in your own life.
So Bergson is the antidote to optimization culture.
He is the intellectual wit that breaks the spell. He provides a way to look at the rigid structures of our lives, the calendars, the KPIs, the logic of the career path, and smile at them. He reminds us that the logic of the machine applies to things, not to people.
He doesn't want to smash your iPhone or delete your calendar.
No, he just wants to ask you, with a bit of a smile, are you sure you need to take it that seriously?
That's a powerful question. It creates space.
It creates breathing room. When you realize that the mechanical view is just one view, and that the feeling of freedom you have in this exact moment is real, the suffocation lifts. You get your live time back. You stop twitching like Chaplin on the assembly line.
It's funny. We started this episode thinking we were talking about a dusty French academic, and we ended up with a prescription for modern mental health.
That's the power of the shift. Sometimes you don't need to change your life. You just need to look at the life you have from a slightly different angle. And suddenly, it's not a tragedy anymore.
It's a comedy.
It's a comedy.
Well, I'm going to try to carry a little bit of that esprit into my week. Hopefully you can too. Henri Bergson, the man who fought the machine with a smile.
And maybe the next time you feel like a cog, just remember, you're the one turning the gears, not the other way around.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.